Welcome, everybody, to another exciting episode of the Hard Truths podcast with Ashton Forbes. Today, I have an amazing guest for you. 25-year retired FBI veteran, John DeSouza, the real-life Fox Mulder of the X-Files. Can't wait to talk to him. Let's do it. Hey, John, welcome to the show, brother. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, Ashton. Thank you so much for having me on Hard Truths podcast. Looking good. It's looking great. And I'm really anxious to be here with you and your wonderful audience. And I'm hoping this is going to be as great as I built it up in my mind to be.
Okay, well, let's do it then. Right off the bat, like, tell people who aren't familiar with you, like, what your background is. You know, I had heard of you many years back that people were calling you the real life Fox Mulder of the X-Files, and I love that show. And I remember looking and being like, oh, he does have this background in the FBI. So what kind of stuff have you looked into?
Yeah, it was basically back in, I was in the FBI and I ended up getting involved with what we called the entire X-Files fiasco at the FBI, because as soon as they, in 1993, they started this new show called the X-Files, and it was brand new, and they put up the first episode in, I think, I don't remember the month, but it was in 93, and it was an amazing show. However, my bosses at the FBI immediately recognized some details from some of my cases in this show, and we're talking about the seventh floor. We're talking about the big wigs at the FBI, and so they called in the maker of the X-Files, Chris Carter, and they called me in too because they were going to accuse both of us of having some collusion there and putting some info together for this show. And they did exactly that. And Chris Carter was able to tell them that no, he had no contact with me. He had no nothing or with any, well, not with any, well, he didn't get any classified information, any secret information, anything of that sort. But he said to my bosses at the FBI that he would be able to further cooperate if they would give him more details of these cases that they say that he pilfered, that he got information from. And they were unwilling to do that. However, they were very threatening. They told him and Fox News. No, not Fox News. It was Fox, the channel that actually put on the X-Files. And they told them, "Oh, we're going to shut your show down. We're going under national security." I don't think they even have the power to do that, but you know, the FBI has a lot of coercive characters in it. I'll just put it that way. And they're very good at making threats, even whether the threats are true or not. So,
wait, so did you actually give him information? And
no,
if
never.
not, do you know where he got them? So
Well,
obviously
yes,
the FBI thought he was getting information from the FBI, right? Like,
yeah. Well, I have my ideas about it, and what I suspect happened was a lot of us in the FBI, especially those of us who work extremely sensitive cases that end up getting NDAs passed out on them, you know, non-disclosure agreements. Those of us who work those types of cases, what we do is we keep a book of notes on these cases, because a lot of the stuff we can't put in FBI files. So we keep what we call off the books notebook, and we keep our files, we keep our notes in it on these cases, so that in case we need to get it back later in front of Congress or something like that. And so what happened to me, I believe, is that a couple of agents that were working with me, they retired to Los Angeles to work as consultants with Hollywood productions, and they took my freaking book, Ashton. You know, you've probably had this sort of thing happen to you before, where people try to steal some of your talent, and they can't steal your talent literally, so they try stealing some of your notes, your blueprints, your things that you have. So anyway, I believe that these couple of agents took my off the books notebook and actually shared it with Hollywood Productions. And whether Chris Carter had any knowledge of that or not, I don't know. That part is not too clear, but that's what I believe.
So you're saying it's real. You're saying it is kind of based on some of your research. And also, wait, like there's cases where you have to sign NDAs afterwards? Like, well, how can they signing that?
Yeah, well, there are cases where if things go really, really wrong and FBI headquarters feels like, or people who are above FBI headquarters feel like they need another control mechanism, then they will come at you with these NDAs, and they will, even FBI agents who are subject to secrecy requirements already. So we shouldn't need to do any NDAs, but they still will come at you with these once in a while. And I'm not even allowed to say which ones I had to sign NDAs for, because that's part of the NDA. You're not allowed to say, but it's not a significant factor really. Because
so you've had to do, in terms of what you can say, can you say how many of these generally you've had to sign? Like more than a handful?
No, I've never had to sign them. I've seen others. Others have to sign them, but I personally have not.
Okay, so the stuff that you did was generally just spooky stuff, but you didn't have to sign any NDAs for it.
Yes.
In the most part.
And I'm an attorney. And I've worked in the legal world also. Yeah. So I already know. I know which things I can't talk about. I know which things I can't ever mention again. I can give you examples of there's been cases with UFOs. And alien technology as well that has been implicated in certain places, in certain ways. And I already know that I can't be specific when I talk about those cases. I can't because
you've had cases related to UFO stuff generally before.
Yes,
you can say.
Yes.
Is that how you got involved with like Stephen Greer? And I saw Billy Carson, like you were in one of their videos. You've been in several different videos and a couple on technology and UFOs. Like, how did you connect to those guys?
Well, I've always been kind of connected with Dr. Greer's work, but that goes back to even the period when I was out of the FBI already. For instance, I was working at Gaia TV, doing different things for them, and that was at the time. When Dr. Greer, for instance, I don't know how much you know about this, but Dr. Greer was the one who first came up with the Atacama alien creature that he came up with, which was that little 6-inch creature that came out of Atacama, Peru. I think it was Atacama, Peru. But people in your audience will chat what exactly where that was. I think Atacama, but
Atacama skeleton, the Atacama skeleton. I remember that vaguely. Yeah. So the small, like little mummy thing that they
found. Wasn't. Yeah, it was a mummy. It was not a skeleton.
Sure.
It was an actual full mummy, which is very significant. So Dr. Greer was able to come forward with that and show that it was not any sort of a fetus or an embryo, that it was actually non-human life, and that's what it was. And so that went on, and then he took it to an infamous fake scientist who was the guy at Stanford Science Department, whose name escapes me right now. And he actually said to Dr. Greer and everybody else that I'm going to do the DNA. I'm going to get the DNA results on this thing, and I'm going to tell everybody, if this thing turns out to be non-human life, because that's all that we were. That's all.
Was it Gary Nolan? It wasn't Gary Nolan on Stanford, was it? It was him.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
That was
Oh,
him.
there's more drama in this community than I thought.
This was a really bad one
How did I not
because
know about this?
because
This is like right before I got involved in all this. Okay, keep going.
Because Dr. Greer, he came up with the first example of non-human life with actual physical evidence and DNA evidence, everything. And he came up with that and he presented that to the world. And that was going to be a huge breakthrough on our planet. And Dr. Greer had it. He had it all. And unfortunately, he trusted Gary Nolan. He trusted Gary Nolan, who said in the preliminary findings, he said, this is absolutely not a fetus. This is non-human life, apparently, from the preliminary DNA tests. I'm not completely sure how that works, but they explained it. I mean, Dr. Greer explained it and Gary Nolan explained it. And all the preliminary tests showed that this was non-human life. Of course, Dr. Greer or anyone else never claimed that it was an alien or anything like that. That was the function of mainstream media, because what they do in these cases is they immediately say, "Oh, everyone's claiming it's an alien, the Atacama alien fossil or the alien mummy." Nobody ever said it was an alien, because we're pretty sure this thing was native to the planet Earth, because that's the indications that we all had. So anyway, Gary Nolan went ahead and said, yes, this is the preliminary test, all show this is non-human life. Now we're going to do the deep DNA testing, which can take, like I heard, it can take years. It can take over a year to do that sort of thing. And sure enough, when he was completed the long range, what they call the long strand DNA analysis, he actually got a visit from, it looks like he got a visit from the military, from the US military. And shortly after that, he called Dr. Greer and he said, "Hey, bad news. It turns out this thing actually is just a fetus. It's a human fetus that was somehow
human fetus.
That somehow is mutated, and it's even a female human fetus." And that's all it was. That's all it was. So forget about all that non-human DNA stuff that I said before. This is the real conclusion. And then Gary Nolan went out on all the international wires and everywhere with the news, mainstream news. He put that out everywhere. In other words, he absolutely betrayed Dr. Greer after he had promised that he would follow the conclusion to its scientific reality, its scientific truth, no matter where it led, and that he didn't care about being ostracized by the scientific community or anything like that. Well, you know about that. But he said, "Oh yeah, I'm willing. I'm right there with you, Dr. Greer. Don't worry. We're going to put out the truth on this thing." And then after he did the long range analysis of the DNA, he went ahead and he did a complete 180. He betrayed Dr. Greer and he betrayed everyone who's interested in real, true science.
Yeah, I don't really trust him, honestly. I had an interaction with him and I randomly got blocked by him. And it turns out, it seems like this is another thing I want to know your opinion on. It seems like there's this weird schism or little cliques in the UFO community. It's not even really cliques because there's not that many. It's really just like two sides. There's one side that is like the Stephen Greer side, that I guess you could say Billy Carson's on that side. Presumably you're aligned with them. Michael Schratt and a few other people that you see commonly on his stuff. And then the other side's like the Lou Elizondo, Gary Nolan, Ross Coulthard, Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, whoever else I'm missing in their crew.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Well, let's get started, because I look at this and I did not expect this coming into the UFO community. Realize that I'm relatively new, like a year and a half into this thing, and realize that there's all this. It's political, political turmoil about people's political opinions. For some reason, there's also this pretty solid alignment of where people stand politically in terms of where they're on this dividing line. And it's not really like the way I divide it, it's not really accurate, but the way I divide it is like the people that think like the aliens are going to come save us or whatever, and that like, you know, just wait for the aliens to come save us and fix everything. And then the other side of it, I imagine, is like, no, these are the people saying like, we've been building this technology, we've been working on it. Maybe it came from aliens or whatever, but like this technology is like, we have to look at like how game breaking that would be. Like, what's your perspective on this? Do you agree that there's this schism that's out there? And what's your opinion of the guys that are on the
my
various sides?
opinion? And my opinion, Ashton, is first of all, I would ask you, please, please, when you have a chance, just read my book, The Extra Dimensional, because in this book, I actually reveal FBI documents that are out there and that actually started me on this road of the truth, down to the truth that alien visitors are not physical. They are interdimensional. They are extra dimensional. They are not physical in the sense that we are. They can temporarily assume that physicality. They can, but it doesn't last very long. And also there are UFOs. And so this document by the FBI was released at the same time as what I call the Roswell disinfo operation, where in Roswell, you had a bunch of people come together and try to put forward the lie, really, that aliens are physical, that they're just physical, just like us, and that alien imminency is real because they just get into their tin cans and they can just crash and be dead by the side of the road, just like any of us could be, just like us, because they're just like us. And that's what the whole gospel of Roswell was, of the Roswell crash, which I believe was in 1947. I believe that was it, in 1947. Well, at the same time, in 1947, this document came out from the FBI, which showed information from an FBI agent who said he had an informant who was himself an alien visitor of some kind, and that this alien visitor told him that aliens are not physical, that UFOs also are made of plasma. They're made of plasma, radiant energy. In addition to
that
whatever
document says that, going back that far, says something about plasma.
In 1947, that's what this document says here. It also says that we should never attack their UFOs, and that the UFOs are somehow, they don't have anyone in them. UFOs are they're vessels that accompany alien visitors, come with them, and carry out small tasks for them, kind of like familiars for a sorcerer or witch of that sort of thing. That's the kind of reality that we're looking at here. So anyway, my book, The Extra Dimensionals, makes it very clear. It also gives my personal experiences with alien visitors, and it shows that I do believe they are absolutely real. I do. However, the problem is that now you have this group of people, along with the unfortunately the New York Times, the greatest bastion of global deception that has ever existed on this earth, and that they basically got together, and they got together with all these former CIA contractors and former CIA officers and things of that sort, and they decided, number one, okay, we're going to grab the entire world of ufology and we're going to bring it under our control. And now I believe in the Cabal is at the top of this freaking pyramid, controlling all the strings. And they are the ones who basically are above all of this. And they are using their whole system of fake whistleblowers and guys like Elizondo and Grush and God knows how many others they are using, because in 2012 to 2017, they decided that they were going to grab control of ufology as a mental construct, and they were going to grab it. So they said, well, what's the first thing we need to do? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to grab control of the ufology of the UFO subject away from the United States Air Force, where it was. This was basically under the control of the United States Air Force. Why? Because these are unidentified flying objects. So they was put under the purview, ultimately, of the Air Force. And the way I know that is because the FBI had many battles with the president and with the Air Force itself to try to get that jurisdiction away from the Air Force. But no, because it makes more sense to have the Air Force in charge of it, because these are aerial things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, they decided, well, you know what? We have several reasons why we're going to bring ufology away from the United States Air Force and bring it under the United States Navy. United States Navy. Why? Because the United States Navy is what controls. First of all, they control all legal issues. But that's another thing. But they also control all the confidentiality and all the secrecy surrounding the development of top secret weapons. Okay?
Really?
Weapons. Yes. And they control all of that. So they said, and they're also were also given the technology that I believe was reverse engineered from 1947, probably, when they did this operation at Roswell. And so they were given total control of this. And then we also see at the same time that, oh my goodness, the United States Navy is having these exercises over off the coast of California. The biggest carrier group that exists in the United States, the Nimitz carrier group, was out there doing exercises, and they were providing a secure atmosphere for the ultimate testing of these things that were those capsules that were flying around and flying all over the place, and then they said, okay, we need to change the name of these things from UFOs to UAPs. So that's what they did. And then the Nimitz carrier group was told, they were part of this plan, and they created a secure atmosphere for these things to be experimented with in the final chapter. And then the New York Times went in there and did a whole workup about this, and showing how the Nimitz carrier group was a poor, helpless victim of all of these UAPs that were flitting around all over the place, and they didn't do anything against them. They just sent out pilots to observe them. I mean, it was a giant theater play, is what it was.
Yeah, so you're saying that it's a big disinformation effort to contain what's really going on and to control the narrative that's out there, and that, there's other reports out there that, and I want to dig into the interdimensional plasma stuff, but basically that there's a group of people that are presenting a certain narrative out there that's protecting national interests. And I don't even disagree with the narrative that you just presented, that like the Nimitz incident, the Tic Tac was like, human technology. They were testing it.
Yes.
That's a narrative that's out there that the UFO community doesn't really want to pick up on.
Oh, no.
But it's a powerful one, because Jeremy Corbell even admitted that Commander Fravor was told by the CIA that the Tic Tac was Lockheed Martin technology, which, of course, there you go. That's your answer.
This is all copied. This is all copied technology. And that's why we're dealing with these drones, these super weapon, what I call the LSDs.
That's what I want to talk about here next. So I want to play this clip. This is how we connected. And it's actually just you praising me. So for the people who are listening, is Ashton being a little egotistical? Maybe. But you know what? When someone who's a former FBI agent who's called the Fox Mulder praises you like this, then you can play a clip too. So I want to play this, and then I want to ask you some questions about it.
Scientists just will say whatever their sponsors tell them to say. But I saw this one great scientist yesterday named Ashton Forbes. He's a plasma technology expert. Have you spoken to him before? Have you had him on the show? But
yeah, we've done a deep dive with Ashton here on the show on MH370, and actually we have a big interview with him coming up in just about a week or so on a lot of these plasma technologies and 0 point energy technology. He's a good friend of the show. Yeah.
Excellent. Because the shocker that he said yesterday, he was on Next News Network yesterday, and the shocker that he gave us was, he said, oh yeah, our intelligence tech community has been able to create plasmas and orbs for years now. For years now. Those plasmas and orbs are definitely created by our military industrial complex tech division. And he says, that's absolutely true. And that's a shocker to hear a scientist that you can trust. And that was, instead of, while all the other scientists are trying to get us to say this ridiculous word plasmoid, which is absolutely ridiculous. Plasmoid doesn't mean it means natural phenomena like ball lightning. That's not what these things are. It's a complete distraction, and it's a confusion of the language. They're using MSM to also amplify that, and they're trying to get people to say plasmoid. Well, I want people to say LSDs, large super weapon drones. That's what they should be saying. And plasmas and orbs, because that's what we're facing. So that's Ashton Forbes had a great little piece.
Sir, thank you very much for that. Right off the bat, I want to respond, just say awesome. I don't know, your video was much better then, so I hope people don't hate on it now. Hopefully it'll show up better in post. But yeah, first of all, the fact, like, I know exactly how you felt when you saw somebody explaining something that like you've worked on and you've investigated, because it's happened to me a number of times over the last year, where I'm investigating this missing plane, investigating this science, and then you find like an old engineer from 30 years ago explaining it all plainly and simply.
Exactly.
And the plasma orbs part too, which was like, I've learned now how they can make the plasma orbs just intersecting scalar beams at a distance, or even just laser beams at a distance very precisely. And they can make plasma orbs, and they can make them large. I just spoke to this guy, John Brandenburg. He's a PhD as well. He said that back in like probably the 90s, maybe even 80s, they were making plasma balls as big as the size of a soccer ball, just randomly messing around. So of course they can make them potentially even bigger now. And so what I wanted to ask you was not just to thank you for that, and I appreciate that shout out, was, what led you down this interdimensional plasma route? Because I want to understand your thought process and just kind of compare my own, so that people who are viewers or what have you can understand how we got to this, kind of convergent point and understanding the phenomenon. So go ahead.
And in that monologue, if I had a little more time, I was also trying to say, this was a phenomenal thing, because Ashton Forbes actually explained to people the first few steps in how to create these plasma orbs, and how it is that we now know, well, at least I now know, that the Cabal has basically copied this alien technology, and they have done it. But what I was going to say is that Ashton Forbes basically, he can explain all these steps, but he probably can't go too far down that road, because it's going to implicate top secret information, like high level top secret information, and you can't put that out. You can't put that out because it'll create all kinds of problems. It's the same reason that President Trump just said that he knows what the plasma orbs are. He knows what these super weapon drones are. These LSDs. He knows, but he's not going to say it. He's not going to say it. Why is that? Because he's still a private citizen technically, and he could face consequences for revealing top secret information, because whoever's dealing with this stuff, they're all using the highest levels of compartmentalized secret information. So for that reason, we just have to be careful. Even if,
let me address that, because that's such a great point, honestly. Like, there's a lot of people that think that the MH370 videos are fake or whatever. I'm just telling you guys, like, I think you have a rude awakening. Like, we have crazy technology. It's super advanced. And figuring out how to make a ball of plasma is actually not that complicated. It really just has to do with like understanding that space isn't empty. And even we don't even need space to produce it. Like they're literally able to produce this plasma just from air. They can just take like the tiny amounts of hydrogen in the air. They can just strip those and make their plasmas, which is absolutely incredible. And this is why I love that what you said also, which is important, is that we probably shouldn't be using the term plasmoids or ball lightning. Because these are natural phenomenon. This is what they use to hide what it is. So you read Eric W. Davis's ball lightning study from 2002, Air Force Research Labs, and you're like, what is this? This is such a weird ball lightning. But when you actually understand it, you realize they were trying to figure out how to stabilize plasma so that it would be stuck like a bubble that you could just move around, like figure out how to take lightning and actually turn it into a ball. What is lightning? Lightning is a huge amount of energy, a huge amount. So then what are these drones? If you can turn a ball of lightning into a drone, like you said, it's a large super weapon drone, or it's at minimum a super weapon drone, maybe a plasma super weapon drone. And this is the part where I wanted to ask you about the Cybertruck guy. I don't know if you've been read about the Matt Livelsberger stuff, but because this is potentially what we're talking about is potentially like higher than nuclear weapons secret stuff.
Yeah.
You could see why there would be whistleblowers, like people. If Matt Livelsberger was a real whistleblower and he's coming out and saying, we're in this war with China over this drone technology and it's got unlimited payload capability. Yeah. That could be a real whistleblower. What are your thoughts on any of that and on the Cybertruck guy?
You know, the Cybertruck guy, it's when you have the FBI in its current state, basically going in there and covering up everything. I mean, covering up everything. Then it's difficult to really form opinions about these cases when we don't have any real information. I mean, we have the guy's name, we have some other things, but we don't have, there's no investigation there because obviously the FBI and others who are working these cases, they see themselves as being in charge of the cover up. That's it. So that's all they're doing. So it just makes it very difficult to deal with that, except maybe on the most speculative level that you can. But on the speculative level, I mean, we can see that it looks like this is not the same guy. It's not the same guy. It looks like his wife has been saying, that's not him. That's not him. And it looks like he actually was basically an American hero trying to prevent a terrible catastrophe here in America. That's what it looks like. And it looks like some operators, some black ops operators probably tried to implicate him in this case, as far as we can tell, which basically was it just seems to be the whole thing with the Cybertruck appears to be basically just a symbolic operation being run against Trump and Elon, because it was purely symbolic. They went in there, they put a giant bomb that wasn't big enough to kill anyone. So they weren't. So that wasn't the aim.
Well, that's the part is that he could have taken out way more people. This is an important note. Is that like he's in the middle of Vegas? If this guy wanted to, he could have just ran people over, let alone the bomb in his car.
Yes. They could have destroyed the entire front of that building if they had wanted to. But obviously they didn't want to. So that's why I'm saying it looks to me like it was just a message from the Cabal to Trump and Elon in the same moment, where you have those two symbols side by side and being blown up somewhat in general. And that's all it appears to be to me. That's all it was. It seems like.
So if that's, you know what, like I'm not even discounting that theory. If the email is real and he really is blowing the whistle on anti-gravity drones, then to me, that's what the message is. The message is a warning to Elon and to Trump saying like, hey, you better not talk about these large super weapon drones or plasma super weapon drones that we have, because this technology is next level and it's multifaceted. Like, yes, there's the destructive capability, But this is also just a ball of unlimited energy practically, which could, change our entire, look at all the lights all around us. It could change everything about our civilization all at once.
And that's the other area that you work too, 0-point energy. And that's why
I think that this stuff's I think these things are tapping into the 0-point energy field in a way that would change physics and our understanding of physics.
Absolutely.
And I think that's part of the cover up too, is that they have to cover up all this stuff because if any one thread becomes unraveled, and that's the part I want to ask you about the cover up side. I mean, you're a former FBI agent, and you just said you think that the feds and the FBI are presenting a false narrative. Is that something you've seen firsthand, where there's been the call from up top, or just somebody wanted to play, they're politically inclined to present a certain narrative? Have you seen that?
Absolutely. I've seen that very much so during my career. I can tell you one specific instance when, and I don't know if you would remember this, but it was the flight TWA 800.
Oh, I remember it. Yes,
off the shores of Long Island, I believe, and it was crazy what happened there. That's one of the cases that I will never get into specifics of it, but I can tell you that it fit into that category that you just mentioned, where it was all the investigators were investigating in one direction, being led in one direction, showing, and the witnesses were all telling what looked to us like the absolute truth of what happened. And then there was a call from the president's office, and it went directly to the FBI director. And basically he said, "You're not going to investigate this any further in this direction. You're going to find what I want you to find." And that's it. And that was the first time I saw up close an entire intelligence organization just be shut down, basically, in their search for truth, completely shut down. And basically we all had to salute and do exactly what the president's office said to do. And again, and that's one that I can't ever get into specifics on, because there were so many families that lost their loved ones in that, and who have never been given satisfactory answers on that. And
that's crazy, man. That's 230 people on that plane too. That's so bizarrely similar to the MH370 incident.
Exactly.
It's so weirdly similar, because God, I didn't think you were going to bring up a story like that, because the MH370 incident, when I first started investigating it, the first thing I realized, there's clearly a cover up at play. The way people are acting, the way they're obfuscating information, the way they would do press conferences, and the families are freaking out and crying.
Right.
And the officials are just saying, they're getting asked basic questions. Can a plane just disappear? And they're like, well, that'll come out in the course of the investigation. You're like, what do you mean? None of this makes sense if you're running an open, transparent investigation where you're trying to get to the truth. So that scares me, because the reason why that statement's so important, John, in my opinion, is that there's a lot of people, and going back to that UFO question I asked you about the various factions, I think there's a lot of people out there that don't think the government's capable of doing something like that, and that the government is good and wouldn't lie to you, wouldn't present a fake narrative to you, wouldn't have the media control it. But it's more invasive, isn't it? Where they are specifically guiding you down a path to come to a conclusion that they want you to come to, right? Is that how do you think they do it?
They do it with pressure. They do it with a culture, an entire culture ecosystem that lets you know. For instance, and I'll just tell you this way: in the case of the TWA Flight 800, they didn't need to pass out a lot of NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, because as an FBI agent, you were basically told by the chain of command, you better not pursue this. You better not pursue this, and you better not make any noise, because if you do, that's all they needed to do. That's all they needed to. The chain of command just let you know that in no uncertain terms. No need for NDAs. No NDAs here. And you can bet we will never find out the truth of that case until that particular United States president is on his deathbed. Maybe at that moment will be the only time that we will possibly get the truth of what happened there. And yeah, that's a pretty regular thing. And I want people to know the reason why Ashton Forbes is a national treasure is because he is the rarest kind of animal there is out there, an independent scientist who will find the truth and hold on to it no matter what, against all kinds of resistance, even from the scientific community themselves. And if all you need to do is look at this case, the MH970 plane that disappeared.
Yeah.
How do I say it?
370, MH370. You're close.
370. Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to get that right. The MH370 plane and the video of the orb plasmas that were circling it and all that.
Yeah,
and to have the strength of character to look at that and say, that was real. That was real. And no matter what, and no matter how many people come after you, the character that it shows, it just shows that Ashton, you will be a legendary figure in the counterculture, which is what we need. Which is what we need. Absolutely, and I truly believe that.
To the point too that you bring up is this, that like the incentive structures are part of the problem. I think that when you really dig down to it, all these people have incentive structures. Like if you're in the government, you listen to your boss. If you don't, then you're not going to get a promotion. You're not going to get a career bump. If you're in academia, if you go against mainstream academia, then you get blackballed. I spoke to Navy engineer Salvatore Pais about this as well. And he says, like, you have to realize I come from the academic world where like I'm judged based on peer-reviewed papers and all this other stuff. Yeah. I don't have those restrictions on me. Because I'm just a social media guy, I can research this stuff. I can present my opinions, and it doesn't matter what people think. And if people don't want to believe it's real, whatever, I don't have to worry about that, which I love. And that's why I like doing this podcast too, because I can talk to other people, and who cares? If you don't like it, too bad. You know, I think that stuff's going to be real, and I want to talk to other people who have also had similar experiences like you. You've either, been exposed to stuff where like it's opened your mind, in the same way. Yeah. And that we can like figure this out and try to figure out what's the nature of this. Because this leads to my next question then, is like, I'm convinced we've figured out how to make these balls of plasma. I've spoken to enough engineers, watched enough clips of other Black Project engineers on the videos, and I'm convinced they figured out a way to turn them into some kind of super weapon where you jam them together and it, like that happened on that video, vaporizes a plane, vaporizes a building, a ship, something like that. And that scares the heck out of me, because I go, damn, I could just imagine scaling that up. And now you can have like, there's no limit to how powerful something like that could be. And I look at that compared to where we're at right now. And I'm like, damn, that's really, really beyond where the public really thinks we're at right now. Like, how do you cross that bridge, and how do you try to interact with people when you're like, no, we got stuff that's like way more advanced? And do you agree that we figured it out?
Oh, absolutely. We did. I can tell you way back in 2011, I had a similar experience to the one that you had with the MH370 plane flight. And it was in 2011, January 28th. We had an incident called and it's called the Dome of the Rock UFO in Israel, in I think it's Jerusalem, actually in Jerusalem, Israel. And it was the Dome of the Rock UFO. And it happened to us while we were doing an operation, transnational operation. And on the ground, our operators on the ground, they told us from Israel, they said to us, basically, whatever operation we were working on, they said, okay, this is canceled. We just had alien visitors just arrived in Jerusalem at 2 in the morning on a Saturday. And this was, and if you go to my YouTube page, which is John X DeSouza on YouTube, and I actually have the best video of it. It's a collection. It's multi-view cameras, several different sources of the same incident. And that's why they call it Dome of the Rock UFO, because in the middle of the night in Jerusalem, you had this plasma orb that came out of the sky and just came down and settled right over the Dome of the Rock, which is a very famous religious site. And they just settled right there, and it just held there. And everyone in Jerusalem, it was a Saturday night, and there were a lot of people out too. Everyone was tourists, locals, everybody was out apparently. And they all saw it, and they all filmed it too. A lot of them did. And that's what I put on my YouTube as well. I filmed it. I showed the film from 6 different angles, including a weather camera that was up that night that recorded the exact same thing. The dome, the plasma orb settled over the Dome of the Rock. It stood there for maybe just like 10 seconds, 20 seconds. And then it gave off a flash of energy that it went through all of Jerusalem. It gave off this flash of energy, and then it just went straight up into the air, and it just disappeared at a speed that was difficult to gauge.
The flash of energy thing is really interesting, because one of the things I found is that MH370 video has a flash of energy, a flash of light that gets given off in it. Now I was wondering, like, is that a science thing? Like, I didn't know anything about any of this. Turns out we've got these virtual photons all around us all the time. And if you pack too much electromagnetic energy, or if you push the electromagnetic energy out, it releases real photons from nothing, from the vacuum. So basically you can pull real photons out with a huge amount of electromagnetic energy. And so that explains what we might be seeing when these orbs or craft are able to, break through the light limit, or whatever you want to call it. I don't think we have a term for it just yet, but the Schwinger limit, I guess, maybe. So that might be a reason for why you were seeing some of that. So it sounds like this was your experience where you kind of woke up and realized, oh boy, there's like something major going on in this world that you haven't been privy to. Is that true?
Absolutely. And when I saw that, and then when I saw all the different camera angles, the different people videotaping the same thing, you're always supposed to check various independent sources that are not colluding, they're not working with each other, but they all duplicate the exact same thing. That's when you're looking at something true here. But then what we were told back in the States when this happened, I had an individual. We always called him the smoking man, and he was a person who was from the global structure, and he always showed up with either he was a State Department employee, or he was a CIA employee, different things, but he would always show up and tell us what was really going on. And this guy, he showed up. His name was, the name he used at that moment was Milsud, and he came in and he would just smoke in public areas where you were not allowed to smoke. And then he would tell us, he would say, yeah, I heard about that operation you guys were working, and that the aliens have arrived in Jerusalem as of today. And he said, because we were all excited. We were like, okay, the next morning, this is going to be everywhere. It's going to be millions of hits. It's going to be insane, and everyone's going to know. And he told us basically, no, they won't. And we said, what? And he said, by the morning, we have different shops that are out there, always monitoring everything. And their whole purpose is to make sure that the public doesn't find out about anything that is genuinely paranormal or alien in nature. So what they do is they do duplicates of whatever happened. Let's say this Dome of the Rock thing. And they'll do their own duplicates so that the algorithm will catch on to their version of what was
not
made.
the real thing.
Not the real thing. Like, for instance, if someone gets like when the Patterson video of Bigfoot, came out, well, at the same time, and he told us these are CIA shops. These are shops that because the Illuminati, the Cabal are terrified that we will get real information about real supernatural topics. So they have these shops that actually wait for something to come out. And when they see it, their analysts create duplicates and so that they grab control of the algorithm, and they'll show a guy in a Bigfoot outfit, that looks really crappy and really garbagey, and they'll just have him fooling around, and then and then that will take over the algorithm from the Patterson-Gimley video, so that when millions of people the next day rush to go see the Dome of the Rock UFO, they'll actually encounter the CIA shop-made video that shows some bright red thing moving through Jerusalem, and they'll say, and that looks very, very fake, very CGI, very nonsensical, and so that all those millions of people the next day that are trying to see this video, they won't see the actual video, the videos that I have uploaded.
You want to know a good story related to that? And before I do, I want to say something that was about the smoky man comment. Like, isn't that just the best? Like, F you, to be like a smoky man shows up that doesn't care about smoking laws, smoking cigarettes in a public building where he's not allowed to smoke. And he's just telling you about, yep, the aliens came. And you're like, crap, is this going to make the front page news? Nope, it's not going to make the news at all. Not even going to make page 6.
Exactly.
It's like, sorry, we control everything, and everything's a lie. We manage your entire perception. Yeah. And just the fact that he's smoking in a non-smoking area shows he's just like above the law. The rules are for the little people. They're not for the people like me, right?
He was. And he would explain that to us all the time. He would say, you guys are idiots. You think that we can let this information out to the little people? Yeah. He's like, what do you want to destroy society? Is that what you guys want? And we'd be like, no, we're investigators. We want the truth to be found. And then we want to give the truth to other people. And he said, that's exactly why you're idiots. That's what he told us. And then the next day, we found out that everything he said happened exactly as he said. And ever since then, I have had
You've been a believer.
had a terrible time trying to show people that this 2011 Dome of the Rock UFO was real. It was absolutely real. And it looks just like the dome, the plasma orbs. It's exactly a precursor of the plasma orbs.
This is why I want to talk to you, because a lot of videos are just they're not compelling enough to, no matter what, even with 6 angles. I mean, I've got 2 videos of a plane that's a real plane that's still missing today, that are military videos and infrared and thermal from 2 different angles. And people are still going, well, it's CGI. It's like people will make up any excuse to not believe something. But this is why, like, for me, I took it to the next level. It's like, okay, well, if that's real, then I need to understand, is the science real? Where does that come from? It must be out there somewhere. I found out it was all just hidden in plain sight. And that's what really started to spook me when I started finding the science. And I'm like, oh, here it is. You just intersect these laser beams, attosecond lasers, and you can produce plasma. It's like, oh, it's just out there. Because then I'm like, how have they been hiding all this? How are other people not figuring it out? And then you find people like you and other people I found that are like, oh, they have been, but only a small number of people. Most people are just kind of asleep. Exactly. And you're right about the disinformation. I think it's even more nefarious than what you said about it. I strongly suspect that there is a video of the USS Columbia, the shuttle that burnt up on re-entry in 2003. There's a very weird old looking video on the internet that looks like what NASA would be looking through a camera at their destroyed shuttle in outer space. It looks just like it. The gravity looks exactly correct. And then at the end, it just has like somebody come on, just says the faking hoaxer. And then it says this was CGI. And it almost looks like the government just took the real video and they just added this imaginary person to it, pretending to make the video.
That's exactly what they did. They do it all the time,
right? That's what they do. All the time. That covers up the real video. And now anybody that looks at it just goes, oh, no, that person claimed to have faked it. And you're like, well, that would be a lot of work. Like, that's like better than Ang Lee's Gravity, or was it Ang Lee that made Gravity? Whatever made that movie Gravity with Sandra Bullock in it. Like this, whoever made this has that kind of effects. Can I watch them? Is there a video of them making this video? Because it's pretty damn impressive. And that's what I ask about the MH370 videos too, where I'm going like, if this is fake, who made it? Show me I want to see a video of somebody making this, because It looks impossible when you look at the details.
Yeah,
and
but
that's what I
don't
think
ask that, Ashton, because then they'll go and they'll reverse engineer it, and they'll do exactly that.
They'll
It's
have
very
somebody
easy
filming it, like
to
doing it.
do. They
I
will
thought, you know
do it.
what? Let me just jump in there because I thought that would happen like over a year ago. I thought that the play that would happen after I realized the stuff's real and I have this shock like you've had as well, where I'm like, oh crap, they're like really trying to cover this stuff up, and they've been covering it up. I was like, the next thing they're gonna do is they're gonna have somebody come out and like claim to have made the video and make like some recreation based on it, you know, and then it'll be so good that people will be like, oh, obviously they did it. But you know what? It never happened. Nobody was ever able to recreate the videos. I thought for sure that was their next play.
Right.
But
the only reason that they didn't do that is because they're trying to show how not worried they are about you breaking through with this thing. That's what it is.
That's what I think the answer is. That's so crazy because I think that like they're just not afraid. Like I have somebody told me literally General Joseph Dunford. You guys can look him up. Lockheed Martin board of directors now. He is the guy that started Space Force under Trump.
Wow.
He's like he was the top ranked military person for like 4 years until 2019. I got a source that told me like he saw the videos and like didn't laugh at them. You know, like people just ignore that. These people aren't afraid. They're not afraid at all. Like they know that nobody's going to believe this no matter what. It doesn't matter what you got, right?
Yeah.
So
that's what it is.
Go ahead.
Like the Turkey. Have you ever seen the Turkey UFOs? The one
that's my favorite one. The one where they zoom in on it and the guy's got the super nice camera. You're like, that's the kind of stuff we need. But
that's another one they never really tried to fake. And it's for the same reason. It's because they just are so confident and they just believe that you'll never break through to millions and millions and millions with this thing. That's what it is. Because I've shown that Turkey UFO videos, and again, that's also on my YouTube. People can go see it, and it's the best versions of it because there are numerous versions of the Turkey UFO.
But part of the problem though is that, like, even those videos, I mean, that's a great one where guys using a really high quality camera with super powerful digital or super powerful zoom, so we can get this really high quality video. But even in those videos, especially because now we're realizing it's plasma and like plasma orbs are this thing, you're just seeing a ball of light. So a lot of the debunker skeptic people are just going, oh, well, you're looking at a star or something because it looks identical to what a star would look like. But that's just because it's a plasma ball. So now you're like, oh, this is why the military is filming in infrared and thermal, because this is how you see more information as opposed to the optical spectrum where you're just looking at a pinpoint of light. And when I started to realize that, I'm like, oh, now the puzzle pieces are really coming together. Because I wondered when those Tic Tac videos, the Nimitz, all those videos come out, I'm like, why is this all like forward-looking infrared? I didn't even know what that meant back then. And now, compared to what I know now, I'm like, oh, well, that's nothing compared to what we got now. I'm like, we got video coverage of everything. So do you think that we're like filming and seeing a bunch of UFOs in the sky and just not telling the world, and we've got like a repository of videos out there?
The genuine UFOs, yeah, sometimes we are seeing them, but right now I'd say about 99% of what we are seeing, observing, recording are all these fake UAPs that are man-made. They are these super weapon drones that are, again, man-made, and even the plasma orbs that we are seeing. 99% of them, I would say, are basically just man-made. And there's a chance that even the plasma orbs are somehow created even by the drones themselves somehow, because these drones appear to have 0 point energy. They appear to have, because if you observe them, there's no propulsion. There's no visible means. There's no infrared signal. There's no heat signature. There's nothing that is conventionally human in that. But at the same time, we've had a couple of congressmen whose names I try not to say, who have been in on all the briefings. They've been read into everything, and they have said these drones have component. A couple of these drones were shot down amazingly by by plasma orbs, supposedly, and they have been shot down. They have been grabbed by the U.S. military, and there has been a lot of examination. And both of these congressmen, separately, on different occasions, both have said, yeah, these drones have components from China. They have components.
I was going to ask you about that next. So, do you think China has this technology figured out now?
I hope not. I hope not. That would be the worst case scenario. But what they also said was, and you had people like Gordon Chang, who watches China and the CCP very carefully. And one of the things that he said is that if China is involved in this, there's probably many other enemies of America also involved in this, in these super weapon drones as well, so that it's not any one country that's involved with this. But we're going to find out more about this the day after inauguration, because Trump has promised that he is going to let the cat out of the bag, which also gets kind of more bizarre because it's almost like Trump is goading them into using these drones against him at the inauguration, because he's saying, if I get inaugurated, I'm going to let the whole cat out of the bag the day after. So you guys have just one shot, like Eminem says, you got one shot, just one shot to grab everything you ever wanted. Will you let it slip?
Mom spaghetti.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's a good point, because it does seem like I'm actually on board with this narrative that like the cabal, the deep state, is afraid that Trump is going to clean house on them.
Yeah.
And this is what I think a lot of people don't realize too, is like, yes, you only appoint certain positions, but those people are basically your boss of the entire, 3-letter agency. And like you just pointed out, there's a lot of control and power that comes over that in terms of top-down decision making that occurs in terms of what you can investigate and what you can't. So,
and you probably
go ahead.
You probably know this too. We had another congressman, Burchett from Tennessee, who said that these things that are being created, he said there is absolutely involvement in creating these LSDs, these large super weapon drones. He said there is involvement from McDonnell Douglas, Raytheon, Skunk Works, and all of these companies, which, and I've got news for you guys, they're not American. You may think that they're American. I'm talking to your audience and people, normies. Yeah. They think that these things are American. They're not. They serve the global superstructure, and they serve the global industrial weapons complex, military industrial complex. That's what they serve. They have no care for what happens to America whatsoever. And that's why we had Congressman Burchett, who said the other day, he said, those companies are completely involved in building these things, in addition to China and whoever else is also involved.
It's scary, because who are the investors in those companies? Then those are the people who are really and so the company could be American, but the investors can be from anywhere that you want, potentially. So it makes a big difference. And then two more companies that are now being exposed just in the last few days, Battelle Institute. They get $10 billion per year, all from the federal government. They're a nonprofit, and they run all the Department of Energy's labs across the entire country, all our super secret labs. Battelle Institute, all federal money, non-for-profit. Also, Aerospace Corporation, also a non-for-profit, all federal money, $1.2 billion last year. All they do is basically hire scientists, and then they contract them out to like Lockheed Martin or whatever to do secret projects. So all of these things are buried with what Greer would call USAPs, unacknowledged special access programs, that basically there's no oversight to. And this is how they hide it all, where, it's under this federal money going to private corporations who are then immune from FOIA. And so it's like this very nefarious configuration of how it's all set up. But I'm also skeptical that Trump will deliver all the goods. Like, I think he'll come out and say, like, either, yes, it was our drones, or he'll say, like, it was China's drones, whatever we know, because we know we've got surveillance capabilities, we know.
Right.
But I don't think he's going to come out and say, yes, we've got free energy or plasma orbs that can annihilate the planet. Like, I don't think he's going to say go that far, which is how, if it was you or me, we would probably, large super weapon drones. But for him, I think that's where he's going to draw it short, because it is national security. Like, it literally is, and that's where it's like, when you said, I don't want China to have this is why everybody was on me when it came to the drone stuff and the Cybertruck guy, because the whole narrative I've been presenting of MH370 is that we're preventing China from getting this technology. And I think that we could justify some pretty evil acts in order to prevent China from getting large super weapon drone technology. Yeah. Would you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely. I mean, the reason that all of this is breakaway technology that is used by the deep state. That's a better word than Cabal. The deep state, and the deep state is just the American subsidiary of the Cabal, but it's a good way to put it. But all of this breakaway technology is owned by the deep state, which is also closely associated with the military-industrial complex, which is global. It is not American. It is global. I'm talking about the Pentagon and many other subsidiaries of that as well. They're all global. They're intimately connected with the deep state.
Exactly. And I do want to ask about this, which is the origins of this technology and your opinions on it. Because when I started digging into like the whole non-human intelligence thing, I found out there is dozens of options. Everything from beings living under the water and under the earth to extraterrestrials and interdimensional beings. Some people were saying that these plasma orbs could be like jinn or angels or, things like that. AI is being some of the options as well. Like, there were so many options. I was like, man. And then also just the breakaway civilization option, which also has its own splinter scenarios, which is where I'm kind of leaning right now. But I'm honestly open-minded to like really any option. Oh, there's also, I don't want to forget, the option of like we dug up some ancient technology from a previous civilization that was on this planet too, and then figured out from there. What is your research kind of shown and where you think this is all coming from?
I think that the proof that all this technology is hoarded, grabbed by, held on to by the same people. It is the deep state. It is the Cabal that sees themselves as in charge of the nations. Because if that wasn't the case, and what that really means is that whenever we find this alien technology at Antarctica base, let's say, or something like that, you'll have the Cabal will swoop in there with their forces to make sure they grab every bit of that technology. That's how it happens. That's how it always goes on. And the reason that we know today that that's how it happens is because none of the nations, the United States, China, has not used this technology against another nation in a large sense at all. It's never happened. And the only reason it's never happened is because the Cabal is very careful about that, not to allow any unlimited access. Unlimited access to any one nation to this stuff. Because if they did, the nation we'd be using it against China. China would be using it against us. And that's a reason why, even if there are Chinese components in these large super weapon drones, I don't believe China has any control over this, because they would already.
Aliens? Like, what if do you think there's an alien species out there? Do you think they're visiting us? Do you think they're underwater? Do you think they look like us? What do you think about aliens?
Yes, and all those patterns have been copied, kind of like when a serial killer goes out and does his signature of how he kills people, but then he gets copycats, fans, admirers who end up copying his exact signature, trying to be exactly like him, and they go out and they do the same types of murders. That's what we're looking at here, where they want us to believe this could possibly be aliens that are accompanying these large super weapon drones. The orbs and plasmas, they're not. They're absolutely not. Not at this point, anyway. I mean, there is a chance that later we could get some alien involvement with this situation if it just gets out of hand. And that's one of the things we're going to see which way it goes. once the LSDs are exposed for what they are.
So you're saying that we've figured out these super weapons potentially based on alien technology, copying this other technology, and that maybe we're being monitored as like little children playing around with the toys to make sure we don't mess around too much. Is that what your thoughts are?
Good. I like that. Yes, that's exactly correct. And I do believe they're watching very closely. And it depends on which way we go with this. As long as, whoever's using the drones doesn't go wholesale to just destroy another society with them. When that happens, I think higher powers are going to have to get involved. That's how I think we're looking at it now.
I think so. Would you think that they are going to just like teleport out of nowhere and appear? Do you think they're going to come out of the water? Do you think they're going to come from outer space? Or where do you think they would come from?
I think they're going to come from the same place they always come from these portals that are created all over the earth, because this is a multidimensional reality. Our existence with whatever alien visitors there are, the real ones, the genuine ones, I think they've always used portals that come here because they're not from outer space. They don't lock themselves in tin cans and sail across from planet to planet. None of that happens. They actually just use portals to come true and to do their deeds, and then they go back.
That's the scariest thing, though, isn't it? Like, if, all the movies are like, oh, it's like Independence Day, the ship's going to come flying down us. But what if instead they just instantly appear out of nowhere, right? Like, all of a sudden there's just ships everywhere right on top of us. Like, that would be way scarier. And I think a better reflection of the relative difference in technology. Like, we always look at everything through a lens of our own technology. But a civilization that's a million years more advanced than us, that has access to the 0-point energy all around us, that can build a material at the atomic layer and make basically any property they want, they're going to look at us like ants. We're like little ants to them. At least in my opinion. I think it's a little sad that humans think we're so advanced when we're probably just cavemen messing around compared to some more advanced civilization. So I guess, like, I don't know. I think that's a good thought. Like, I think that they wouldn't care about us. So they're probably just watching and, like, see what the kids are doing until they mess up, because we're so just far beneath them at this point. But so if you favored a certain opinion on where they were coming from, so then you would say that they could be coming from pretty much anywhere, right? Because of the portal situation. Like, it doesn't.
Pretty much.
And then you're saying that our reality is. So you would subscribe to the multi-universe, multi-reality timeline or time situation where you can just like jump between potential realities. There might be multiverse of realities going on at once. Is that your thought process?
Yes, or they could be coming from Earth itself in a different time period as well. So that's a movement in a different direction, but still multidimensional as well.
Oh, 100%. Yes, I mean, okay, that's what I wanted to understand, was what your perspective of multidimensional was. And I totally agree with your perspective on there. I'm not personally convinced that we've got like a multi-universe thing going on, but I haven't ruled it out. I just don't have enough data to assume. I think the ways to look at it, in my opinion, are one, either time is deterministic, where we don't really have free will and everything was always predestined to be, or like what you said with multi-universe, where like everything's happening slightly differently in different universes and you can kind of slide between them based on your decisions. I think they're both really interesting theories. And I think they open the door to time travel, which is potentially important when we're talking about this stuff with portals. Because like, if you go through a portal and now you're on the other side of the universe, like, how does that work with time? And like, if you come back through the portal, is it like a Narnia situation and now it's like 1,000 years later? Or is do you come back through and it's normal time again? I don't know. It's pretty interesting thoughts. Any thoughts on time travel?
It depends on whether you believe Einstein was real or whether he was just something that was put together by the powers that existed at the time in order to make us believe certain things. So I think the best answers on that probably lies with Tesla and his writings. And I think we need to comb over those with a fine-tooth comb, and that will give us a lot more insight than any of the other people that we look at today. That's what I think.
I agree a lot. I used to think he was a mythical character, and then I found out that he was really a guy, and all the power we use is based on his inventions. And he thought that free energy was possible based on radiant energy, which is now basically just 0-point energy. And it's like, he thought all of this, and we just kind of ignored it for 100 years, 150 years. One more thought on the alien thing. Here's a thought for you. I want to get your opinion on these plasma orbs. What if it turns out they're like really easy to invent? Like it only seems hard because we just haven't thought about trying to make them. But what if it turns out like we can make them as easy? I have this lighter I keep around for examples, and I think it ran out of juice. But like, what if we could make a plasma orb as simple as I can turn this lighter on, right? What if this was a plasma orb generator, and that's all I needed, and I could just make a plasma orb, and then the plasma orb, just like a bubble, starts floating around. And then eventually it dissipates, but we can control it, move it around. What if it turns out that is just some property of the universe, and like any civilization, that once you figure that out, now you've just moved up like the scale from like, cavemen figuring out fire. This is like fire cavemen figuring out electricity. Like that's how much you would jump up. The reason why I wanted to get your opinion on this is because, like you said, like we're making our own artificial version of these. What if these aliens that are out there, whatever, any non-human intelligence, what if they figure out how to make them too, and that, progressed and created this huge growth in technological advancement for any civilization? Do you think that's a theory that makes sense to you? You like that theory?
Yes, it does. It does very much so. And I think it's very possible that we can create plasmas in the way that you're saying. However, the addendum I would add to that is that it really looks like there would be a point where these plasmas, these orbs, would become sentient, would become alive. And then you'd have the problem of, well, if they do become alive, then what if they become independent of the creator, and are able to run around and do whatever they plan to do, whatever they think is important? See, that's the other factor I think you have to add in, because from what I've seen, there's a lot of these plasma UFOs that behave kind of like they're alive, like not biological life in the sense that we know, but there's mechanical life. There's other types of sentience and life that we are not prepared to understand fully. And I think that would be the other factor, because then what if you create these plasma orbs, Ashton, and then they just decide that, you're not worthy of being alive or around because you're just biological, and that's not important to them, So I think that's another factor that we need to add in there, because I can see
100%.
that.
I'm 100% all in on what you just said right there. And I didn't used to be. Like a little over a year ago, it was Salvatore Pais when I first spoke to him. He started talking about conscious plasma, and everything else he was telling me was so grounded. And I listened to him like, And he's telling me about Joseph P. Farrell, and I think other people said, I think the Robert Temple book, I forget the name of it. All talk about this idea of conscious plasma. And then, though, the more you start investigating Tesla and this idea of this energy all around us, you really start to wonder, like, what is sentience? Like, what if sentience is just a permanent connection to this energy that's out there? I mean, we eat all the time so that we always have energy in us. And the moment we stop, well, we die. So why couldn't a ball of plasma, if it has a permanent connection to that energy field, why couldn't it be sentient? Exactly. And the other thing that I tell people too, anyone that's skeptical of this, things as far, well, look at all the different types of life we have on the planet. We have trees and plants. Those are, is that sentient? I mean, it's alive. We have dogs, animals, fish, squid, all these other types of creatures that are out there, and human beings and monkeys. To me, it seems like a pretty logical answer that the connection to this energy field is life. And then you broach the topic of like the same problem with AI. What if AI or a sentient plasma or some combination, can you imagine a sentient AI plasma, decides that, well, we're biologic. We're basically just ants, and you step on ants, or let's say we're a parasite and it decides we're a parasite and we're not in harmony enough with the universe and decides to wipe us out. Like, I'm actually terrified of that. I'm pretty sure at this point, like, that's just guaranteed what's going to happen. Everybody else is going, no, Ashton, the AI is totally great, blah, blah, blah. Nothing's going to happen. And I'm sitting going over here, guys, like, can we delete all the AI before it's too late? Because we're cooked, guys.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Well, the one thing that comforts me is that I do believe in God, and I do believe that God of one is God of all. Either you believe in God or you don't. And that I think that there's a factor here that one of the reasons why, for instance, God allowed, for instance, the Anunnaki, and they're not by any means the only ones, but he allowed Anunnaki to create new forms of life, which they did. We have all the recordings all over Earth of when the Anunnaki created, and who are also sometimes referred to as fallen angels, and they came and they created different forms of life, and they have paintings and frescoes showing them doing this and having their little battery packs with them and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. And I think that one of the things about the creatures that separate from God is that they always go back to trying to imitate God and be just like God, which means creating life, creating new life. And so I think it actually amuses the creator God to actually let them try to be like him. I think that's one of the things that we see going on. And that's why this conversation is so important about the plasma orbs getting consciousness and AI getting consciousness. And I think that sort of thing is going to be allowed. It's going to be allowed because it amuses God to watch us and watch others try to be just like him. I think that's what we're facing here.
Well, he made us in his image, so it makes sense, right? I mean, that's the whole point. And that's what scares me too about this idea that maybe it is all just a simulation, and we're a simulation that another life form created, that another life form created, and eventually you get up to God. You know, that's also a solution to the answer. And so it's like, oh man, maybe we are in a simulation. We're like 3 simulations deep already right now, because when you think of this idea,
you read Thomas Campbell, My Big Toe?
No, I haven't, but obviously great minds think alike, right?
Yeah, check him out because Thomas Campbell is a physicist, and he's kind of like quantum. I don't know if they call themselves quantum, but he's like a quantum physicist. He's brilliant thinker, and he's the one who wrote My Big Toe, My Theory of Everything. And he's just amazing. And he says he can just take a few steps to prove to you, and he does in this book, to prove to you that you are in a simulation that may be exactly like what you described. So he's just a brilliant guy. That's one of the few scientists. You know, I don't know anything about science, but I tell you what, I am an investigator, and I'm an investigator, and I know what I do know is when people are lying to me or when they're telling me the truth. And I find most scientists are kind of like used car salesmen trying to sell lemons. Yeah. And they're just trying to feed you all kinds of nonsense. And I don't need to know a lot about science to say to myself, this guy's just making this bullshit up. He's just making shit up. It's this nonsense. And when I hear somebody like Thomas Campbell or yourself, I can say, wow, these guys, they're telling the truth. They're committed to the truth. They're convicted by the truth. And that really makes all the difference in the world. And it's the reason why I've only trusted a few people as scientists throughout the years, like Nikola Tesla, McKenna, Thomas Campbell, and very few others. And I recommend it's a good way to be. Just find out if they're telling you the truth. That's first. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, and I think that's a good note to end it on for our discussion today. So I just want to thank you, John DeSouza, a former FBI agent, for having this conversation with me, talking about the deep state, corruption, plasma orbs, and aliens, and all this fun stuff. I mean, I'm just blessed to be on this earth, be able to talk to fun people like you. And I do want to say it is really important that we talk about this plasma orb stuff. I think we're going to be vindicated in the future, and we're going to find out they do have these plasma orbs that are drones that have basically unlimited payload capability. And that's going to usher in like potentially a new Cold War and a new way of thinking for all of humanity. So thank you for being an influencer of these ideas and pushing these ideas out there to other people on podcasts, because I strongly believe we're in an information war, and that the only way we win is by getting the ideas out there, especially on alternative media. So thank you, John. Go ahead and say whatever you want to say, and you can shout out your books and where people can find you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ashton. It is so awesome to be here with you. And yes, people can find me at my website is johntamaBooks.com. And I would urge people, especially right now, to just take a look at my book, The Extra Dimensionals, because it goes into everything that's happening right now. Even it was written many years ago. It was written years ago. But what's in that book is everything that's happening right now. And I just want people to just get your personal assistant to read you the notes at least, and put that together for you, so you can have some idea of what's actually happening. Because right now we're on the cusp of possibly these large super weapon drones possibly going kinetic against us, and we're going to see what happens at the inauguration. I would ask people, don't go to the inauguration; just watch it on your television. Just watch it on TV and don't go there, because we're in a very, very dangerous time, and we need to make sure as many of us survive as possible. That's what we're looking at right here. Thanks again, Ashton. Great being with you.
Thank you very much, sir. This was another episode of Hard Truths Podcast. Check us next time, guys. Later.